Hey everyone, Aaron Davis here from FCP Euro, and today I'm working on a 2017 Q5, and I'm going to show you how to replace the camshaft timing chain on the 2-liter engine. So this timing chain kit that I have here includes a 5W40 oil change, 50-50 mix coolant. It comes with the camshaft to crank timing chain with the tensioner, the guides, hardware. Also comes with the cam bridge with new hardware for that as well, the upper timing chain cover, the lower timing chain cover, and also the sealant for the lower timing chain cover. This timing chain kit pertains to all the 2 liters. The engine codes would be CAAB, CPMA, CPMB, and the hybrid CHJA. Usually when you do this job is you're going to see your check engine light on for P0016. You'll see cam crank correlation, which means that the ECM is noticing that the camshaft and the crankshaft are not in time, and it's time to look into the timing of that. Also to note, the 2-liter is an interference engine, so if your tensioner were to give out, your valves would make contact with your piston. So it's also a good idea to do a leak down test and also a compression test to see if any damage has been done to your valve. Me personally, all the ones I've seen fail usually have valve failure, which is a really good idea to replace the timing chain as soon as you can. So the earlier 2 liters are very common for the tensioners to fail, and they actually updated it with a new tensioner, which actually is included with this kit, so you don't have to deal with that headache. Some common symptoms are no crank because the engine seized because your valve's hit. Also, you can have extended crank, or honestly, if you turn the car on and it starts running rough with a whole bunch of misfires, you may want to look into that as well. There's no real mileage on when to do this, but me personally, I'd start looking around like the 65,000 mile mark because it is very common on the 2 liters. But also just keep an eye on it to make sure no damage is done to your engine. So this kit in front of me is kind of a comprehensive job, but hopefully with this DIY I can show you how straightforward it is to do at home in your own driveway, or if you have a lift that'd be great, but you don't need those. Also for this video, I am going to be taking the front clip off. You do not need to do that for this job. You can put the car in source position, but for the ease of the video and camera angles for you to see everything, we will be removing it. So now that I told you about the job, let's look at the tools you're going to need. These are the tools you're going to need to complete the timing chain job. Right here to my right is the CTA Timing Toolkit 1023. It includes a vibration holder, also known as a crankshaft holder, the tensioner tool to relieve the tension on the tensioner, the camshaft holders, a variety of sockets for the cam bridge, also snap ring pliers to rotate the exhaust cam, also a clip to put in for the tensioner when you release it, a razor blade, a variety of torque wrenches and ratchets ranging from 3/8 to 1/4 inch. We're also going to need some wrenches, 13 millimeter, 17 millimeter, 19 millimeter, 22 millimeter. The oil filter tool, CTA 9180. You're going to need a 24 millimeter to rotate the crankshaft, a 16 millimeter, an M10 triple square, a 13 millimeter, a T25, a T30. I also like to have a magnet. It helps get the bolts out easier. A mallet, a pry bar, a variety of screwdrivers from flathead to Phillips, 90-degree hook picks, clamp pliers, and you can also use the hand ratchets, but I also like to use the electric ratchet. Now that we looked at the tools you're going to need, let's get started. So now we're going to get access to the battery, and we're going to disconnect it. On the Q5, the battery is actually in the trunk, so you're going to pop the trunk. You're going to take the cover off. So now we're going to take the plastic tray out, disconnect the subwoofer, and unscrew this for the spare tire. You're going to take the subwoofer out first. Now we're going to lift the spare tire up. Put this to the side. Lift up the carpet cover. Now we're going to loosen these 2 clips right here. Pull this up, and here's your battery. Take the positive cover off. It's held in by this tab. Now you're going to use a 10 millimeter. Loosen the positive, and then I also loosen the ground with a 10 millimeter. Basically, you don't want the car to have power when you're doing this timing chain job. So take the negative off and pull up like that, and I also just put a rag over the positive terminal to make sure there's no way this car can turn on while doing the job. So now that the battery's disconnected, make sure to not close your trunk because your car won't have power to open up your trunk. So now it's time to remove the under tray. It's held in by T25, so we're going to work around it. So now that it's loose, Now this one's, make sure they're all loose to make sure it comes out. Push down a little bit, and just slide out like that. All right, so now we're gonna drain the coolant. Here's the valve right here. You're gonna use some pliers, loosen the coolant cap because you don't wanna release pressure in the coolant system before draining it. You're gonna twist it, and come out right out of that nipple. So now we're gonna move the 3 T25s in the wheel well liner. It's holding on the front bumper. The first one's here, right here in the middle, and then right here on top. So now that the bolts are removed, I'm gonna peel back the liner. Once the liner's unbolted, you pull back and you reach in here, you disconnect the fog light. What we did here, we're gonna do the exact same procedure on the driver's side. So now we're gonna remove the clips holding on this front cover. I'm gonna use a 90-degree hook pick, and you push it in like a quarter of a way, then you pry around it, and it will come right up. And it's the same process for the remainder. So now that the clips are removed, you're gonna pull up and slide it back. It comes off one piece. Now I'm gonna remove the top 2 T25s holding in the front bumper. Just for ease of removal, I'm gonna use a magnet so you don't lose it. So now we're gonna disconnect these 2 connectors. There's a red safety tab on this one you pull out. Like this. And then we're gonna pull out the HomeLink one. So now that all the bolts are removed, I'm gonna show you how to remove the front bumper. I am doing it on the passenger side, but it's the same on the driver's side. So you're gonna grab the corner, you're gonna pull out. Same process, grab the corner, pull out. So now you want to come to the middle of the bumper, slide out like this. Now the front bumper's removed, I'm going to pull it to the side. Now we're going to remove the air duct held in by 2 T25s, squeeze the guides in, and you pull up. So now we're going to be removing all the clips that it's held onto the front. Use a 90-degree hook pick, you want to go underneath here, you pry up. Now just following the harness, you're gonna disconnect the headlight. You wanna push in, squeeze the tab. There you go. Put that harness to the side. Now we're gonna work our way to the front of the vehicle. You'll see these harnesses right here. You can just pull these up. Disconnect this harness. And then you'll see this right here, and it's gonna continue on the front carrier. So see the harness right here, use a 90-degree hook pick, get this tab out, unplug the horn, another tab right here, and then this is why you really have the battery disconnected too, because this is your airbag. It's a brown safety tab. Basically what I do also, I just grab this harness and I put it on top of the wheel to get it out of the way. All right, now I'm gonna disconnect these connectors on top of the front end to get them out of the way. And then this is the same harness as the headlight. And there you go. Disconnect this connector right here, which senses if your hood's open or closed. Move this out of the way. And now I'm going to show you how to detach the hood latch. So same thing with a 90-degree. It's held in by these 2 clips. So you can just slide them out right here. So now you want to spin it right here. You'll see these tabs. You want to push them in. See this dot right here, and there's one identical underneath it. You slide your 90-degree hook pick like this, and then right underneath it as well. This is the cover for the actual cable. So it's disconnected, and you can just slide it out. And now you see this cable right here. You pull out, take it out, and then you see the ball, it releases from the actual holder. Now the hood latch is just disconnected. Now I'm disconnecting this sensor, push in. You can disconnect it from the holder. Disconnect the horn like I did on the driver's side. Right here. Disconnect this. Up top. Up top again. Airbag. There's one more holder on the side, just like on the driver's side. And same thing, I'm gonna put this on top of the tire so it's out of my way. So now I'm gonna temporarily remove the crash bar. It's held in by 4 13s. Now I'm gonna use a pry bar just to loosen up some pressure on the actual aluminum frame so this crash bar comes out easier. So now I'm gonna take these fins out, use a 90 degree, and you're gonna push into both tabs. Slowly slide it out, but there's this vent hose right on the side. Just pull it up. Push it out of the way. There's more right here. Push in. And then you slide it right out from the intercooler. And you're gonna do the same process on the driver's side. All right, so on the Q5, the headlight assembly is a little different compared to like an A4. You're gonna see a headlight bracket right here, but chances are if you're doing this job at home, you do not have the proper tools to actually drain and fill the AC system. So I'm gonna show you a trick really quick so we can pull the AC condenser so you can continue doing this job at your house. So now I'm gonna grab a pair of dikes and I'm gonna cut the rivets. There's one on top and then one on the inner side. I'm gonna use a hook pick. Now the rivets are out. So now I have a set of calipers. I'm gonna measure the height of the bracket because this is the height level for your headlights. And it's about 9.1 millimeters to remember that when you bolt it back up. Now I'm gonna remove the T30 for the headlight bracket. So now that we removed the bracket for the headlight, we're able to slide the AC condenser out by removing some clips. So I'm gonna use a 90 degree hook pick. I'm gonna push in and up, and you'll see that the AC condenser is starting to come up. I'm going to do the same thing on the driver's side. Might need to pry at it a little bit to get it loose. So after sliding those clips up, the AC condenser is actually loose. So now you're going to be really careful because the AC system is charged. I'm showing you how to do it this way because you're more than likely doing this job at your house and you do not have the special tools to actually drain and fill the refrigerant. So just be careful when you're taking this out. So now the AC condenser is out of the way. Just be careful you don't hit anything and cause damage to it because that would be a very expensive repair. So I know that I temporarily removed the crash bar. Now I'm gonna reinstall it just so it's easier to take the whole front clip off. Now I reinstalled the crash bar, I'm gonna lift the car up and then start unbolting things from the bottom. So now I'm gonna remove both the brackets holding the front clip on. It's one T30, and then it's one 13. Now I remove this intercooler hose, the flathead. Now I'm gonna remove the other intercooler hose on the passenger side. So now we're gonna unclip the radiator fan. There's a red safety tab you have to pull out. Take that out of the way. So next we're gonna loosen the training cooler lines. You're gonna need a 19 and a 22 millimeter wrench, and I'm gonna show you a trick with gloves and zip ties. So the coolant's drained, but you still have to remove the lower coolant hose. So I'm gonna use a 90 degree hook pick to slide this clip up. And then this is a trick. I grab a really long flathead and I put it right on top right here. I take a mallet and then I always put the clip back in because you do not want to lose them. Audi doesn't sell them separately. All right, now I'm gonna remove the upper radiator hose with this clip with a 90-degree hook pick. Now we're gonna remove the coolant line that connects to the coolant reservoir. I'm gonna use a 90-degree hook pick and slowly wiggle it and push the clip back in so you don't lose it. Now we're gonna remove the 3 16mm that's holding on the crash bar. All right, so now we're gonna remove the T30 right underneath the headlight where the fender is. And it's the same process on the passenger side. So now we're gonna remove the T30 for the back of the headlight. You don't have to remove the bolt fully, you just have to loosen it. So this will be able to slide out. And it's the same process on the driver's side. So now we're gonna remove the top 2 T30s. I'm gonna loosen them and leave them in there, and then I'm gonna grab a buddy of mine to help me actually hand loosen the bolts out of the way and carry the carrier out carefully. Now we're gonna have to remove the cert belt. We're gonna use a 16mm to loosen the tension. And now we're gonna take the tensioner out. All right, now we're gonna remove the tensioner. We don't have a pin right now. Also, it's not a bad time to replace the actual tensioner in a belt while we're here. So I'm just gonna loosen the tension, take this 10mm out, triple square. Now it's time to drain the oil. The oil drain plug's a T45. So I'm gonna go ahead and loosen that. So now that the oil is draining right now, we're gonna pull the engine cover off. We're going to use CTA 9180 for the oil filter. Now I'm going to install the new oil drain plug. This is a Corteco drain plug, and instead of using the T45, it's going to use a 6mm Allen. And you're going to torque this oil drain plug to 30 Newton meters. So now we're going to unplug the camshaft adjuster. It's a gray safety tab you pull out, and then you squeeze, put that to the side. And now we're actually gonna remove the 3 T30s for the actual magnet. All right, so now I'm gonna remove this coolant pipe. I'm gonna use a 90-degree hook pick to get in there, just to work it. Make sure you don't pop any holes or you will have a coolant leak. I'm gonna unclip it from this cover. Just push it to the side. Now I'm gonna use the T30 again. It's gonna bolt the dipstick tube and the coolant pipe. All right, so now that this is unbolted, I'm gonna remove the actual dipstick so you pull it out. Be careful you don't break it. You're gonna rotate it like this. You can just slowly yank at it like this. Now the dipstick's out. We're gonna actually take the magnet out. And don't be alarmed the oil that comes out. So now I'm gonna remove the upper timing chain cover. It's held in by 5 T30s or 5 10s. I have a T30, so I'm just gonna use that. These ones won't come out, they're held in by the gasket. So they'll stay in place. So now the bolts are loosened. I'm gonna use a 90-degree hook pick. See if I can pry between them. So now we're gonna move the spark plugs and the coil packs. It makes the engine easier to turn over. And also I'm gonna show you the trick to make sure that cylinder 1 is at top dead center. So it's 1 T30 right here that's holding on the bracket. I'm unplug the valve lifts. Has great safety tabs. You have to pull up and then pinch. I'm also going to unplug the mass airflow sensor. Right here. And then slide out the oxygen sensor. Now I'm going to use a 90-degree hook pick. It just makes it easier to get these connectors off. Gives us enough room to slide the coil packs out. I'm going to use a flathead. Work your way from cylinder 4 to cylinder 1. Now I'm going to remove all spark plugs. All right, so now I'm going to show you a trick for top dead center. I'm going to take a really long screwdriver, put it through cylinder 1, and now we're going to wipe down the whole cover, and we are going to look for the arrow for the crank. So you're going to rotate the engine clockwise, never counterclockwise, because you don't want to take it out of time. All right, so we're going to put the little mark notation right here where the pulley is. And the engine's at top dead center. Also, another way to tell also is the crankshaft mark with the indent and the actual mark on the actual cover. And then you also want to see the camshaft timing marks up here, up top. And also, the screwdriver cylinder 1 is at TDC. I have Ethan counterholding the crankshaft with a special tool. I'm going to use the 24mm. It's the only time you're allowed to go counterclockwise because the tool's holding the crankshaft in time. All right. So now that I loosened the crank pulley, I'm going to pull this off. And then you want to use this specialty washer from CTA Tools because you don't want the crankshaft to go out of time. This is going to hold the spur gears together so nothing happens. So now I'm going to remove the bottom timing chain cover with the T30s. Now the lower timing chain cover is off. All right, so now that the lower timing chain cover is off, I'm going to use a razor blade and a scraper, and I'm going to scrape all the old sealant off. Just want to make sure you don't actually do any damage to the aluminum. So just scrape lightly. So now we're going to move the cambridge. I'm going to start with the 6 T30s. Now I'm going to remove the M10 on the exhaust camshaft. Please note it actually varies on models. It can be either an M10 triple square or an M8 triple square. This one's an M10. In the CTA timing toolkit that we have linked in the description below, It's going to include CTA 1032. It actually includes 3 of the sockets to take this specialty valve out. There's actually 4 variations, so you'll also have another one that's free in the kit. So there's 4 variations. You have to see where the dots line up, and then you have to test out to see which socket actually fits to remove it. And also please note that this valve is actually reverse threaded. So to tighten it, you go left; to loosen it, you go right. So I went to go loosen this valve, but actually turned the engine over just a little bit. So I put the vehicle back to top dead center. I'm actually going to counterhold the crank with a 24mm socket while I loosen up the valve. So I'm going to leave that here. Now we're going to loosen this valve again. I'm just going to use 90-degree hook pick and put it in the valve. Just easier to remove. If you just rotate it like this. Just be careful. Don't be alarmed that oil's coming out. It's from the cylinder head. So now that all the bolts are removed, we're going to go ahead and remove the cambridge. You just slide it out. So I removed the cambridge, and as you can see, the screen's actually damaged and the screen's actually stuck inside the cylinder head right here. So I'm going to use some needle nose to see if I can get the screen out of the cylinder head. I'm going to use a hook pick to see if I can get it free. Okay. So now I'm going to remove the 2 middle T30s from the cylinder head. All right, now we're going to install this tensioner tool that releases the tensioner properly. All right, so now we're going to remove the oil pump guide and chain. So here's the oil pump guide. There's a little pinhole right here with this bracket. You can easily squeeze with your hand. I'm going to use a hook pick just to squeeze it in there to hold it in place. It's held in by 1 T30. And now you can see where I have the hook pick going right through the pinhole to keep the spring compressed so it doesn't lose the compression. Work its way over the crank bolt. Now that's out of the way. All right, so now that I have the tensioner tool installed, you're gonna take a pair of pliers, you're gonna squeeze these 2 clips together, and now you're gonna go towards the driver's side. You're gonna let go of those clips. And with this kit includes the new tensioner clip. So now the tensioner is fully compressed and ready for removal. Now I'm gonna remove these 2 10mm. It's holding in the special tool. Now I'm gonna remove the 2 T30s holding the tensioner in. Now we're gonna move this guide for the tensioner. It's held in by 1 M10 triple square. All right, now the bolts removed, you're gonna slide this guide down. Now we're gonna move the other guide that's held in by 2 M10 triple squares. You're gonna slide this guide out. Just have to wiggle it. There you go. Now we're gonna install the camshaft lock tools. There's already existing thread holes inside the cylinder head. You just thread them in. And then you'll see that they lock the camshaft into place. Now this one, the exhaust cam, you thread them in. So on 2 liters, sometimes the exhaust camshaft may have wrench clearance, which actually means you can put a wrench on the camshaft and actually rotate it to line it up. We're working on a flex fuel engine right now, engine code CPMB. Does not have wrench clearance. There's a tool in here that you can insert to rotate the camshaft. So we're going to use it. I'm going to rotate the camshaft a little bit, and then you can slide that in there to lock the camshaft. There is a special tool to rotate the exhaust camshaft if it does not have wrench clearance. We actually don't have the tool with us right now, so I actually used a pair of snap ring pliers and it got the job done. So now I'm going to remove the top timing chain guide. I'm going to use a flathead. I need to slide it in here. I need to slowly push down to let go of the grip and just slowly wiggle it out. All right, so now that we have the cams locked and the upper timing chain guide off, we can go ahead and start removing the timing chain. And you just have to wiggle it around the actual cam locks. So right here, as you can see, this is your balance shaft chain. Here's the guides right here, and this is your tensioner. The tensioner is actually different on the balance shafts. It's not actually a hydraulic tensioner. It's actually just one bolt. These chains tend to not stretch. The only time you really take these off is if there's actually a balance shaft failure, and or if you have really high mileage. If you're doing the timing job, again, you might want to look into these. This vehicle actually has really low mileage, and we're only doing this timing chain video for you guys to show you an easy DIY how to do this at your house. And most of the times, actually, when these balance shafts do fail, you're more than likely going to need an engine. And if you want to actually pull these balance shafts out to inspect the screens that get clogged up over time, you're actually going to need a special slide hammer tool from Audi. So this car has really low mileage, has 65,000 miles. I inspected the chain and the guides and the tensioner. There's no movement here. This all seems really well to me. We're not going to touch it right now. So now I'm going to show you actually how to time the camshafts and the crankshaft. So now I'm going to slide the new timing chain on. You're going to want to look for colored links on this aftermarket chain. It shows black links, which are for the camshafts, and then there's one single black link down here, which I'm going to use for the crankshaft. And you're also going to notice two black links right here, and that make sure you don't time them with these links. Make sure you time it with the single links. So now I'm going to slide the timing chain down like this, work it around the camshaft locks. Make sure I get the black link as close as possible. I'm going to slide this on. Okay. All right, so now the timing chain's sitting on here. There's some slack right here. So the first thing you want to do is have this little slack right here so you can slide in the new guide. You're going to slide it in. Okay, it's slid in. Now I'm going to use these tools to make sure the line is fully there. I'm going to grab the chain down here, keep tension on it. So the black marks here for the exhaust cam, black marks here for the intake cam. Black mark is here for the crankshaft. All right, now I'm going to install the guide over here. Install the new M10s, triple squares. So now we're going to install the timing chain tensioner held in by two T30s. Now I'm going to torque the tensioner T30s, 8 Newton meters. Just hand tight, nothing crazy. Now I'm going to slide in the tensioner guide while holding tension on the timing chain because you don't want to let go of the timing marks. And now I'm going to unscrew this specialty tool right here. I'm holding tension on the timing chain myself. And you're only doing this so you can slide it out to bolt the tensioner guide in place. You're going to install the M10. I'm still holding tension on the guide so the chain does not move. All the M10s are tight by hand. Now's a good time to check to make sure your cams are still in time. Right here, the exhaust cam is aligned with a black link. The intake cam, the marks are here. Black link, still hold tension on here. And you can see right here, this arrow is on the black link for the crank. That indicates this engine's in time. So now it's time to pull the grenade for the tensioner. All right, now we're gonna take the intake cam timing tool off, and your engine's in time. All right, so now I'm gonna torque the M10s to 20 Newton meters. Now I'm gonna install the oil pump chain. There is no timing marks on the oil pump chain, so you can put it on however it goes on. Now I'm gonna reinstall the oil pump chain tensioner. It's held in by one T30. Now we're gonna torque this T30 to 9 Newton meters. So now we can go ahead and pull this. And there you go. So now I'm gonna use my 24 millimeter socket. I'm gonna put it onto the crankshaft, and make sure you always go clockwise, never counterclockwise, because you can always risk your chain being out of time after that. So I'm gonna crank it over twice. And basically why I'm doing this is I just want to make sure that there's nothing locking this up, so when I go to turn the car on. So I crank this engine over pretty easily, so that means everything should be timed correctly. If you go to do this and you're going to rotate the engine, and if it locks up or seizes in one location, I would definitely go back, relook at your timing, because there's a chance it may be out of time. And if you turn the engine on when it's out of time, you can cause a lot of damage, specifically to the cylinder head, because like I said earlier, it is an interference engine. All right, so I went ahead and cranked the engine over twice by hand. Like I said earlier, the marks were on the camshafts and the crankshafts. I rotated it twice and they do not line up, so do not be alarmed. It's gonna take roughly around 70 or 80 times to turn this engine over to actually get the timing marks on the camshafts, the crank, and the timing guide links to line up again. All right, so here we have the new lower timing chain cover, and I'm gonna show you how to seal it with the sealant that includes in the kit. And you're going to stay on the inside of the holes on the timing cover. And this one right here is a bolt hole and a dowel pin hole. You're gonna go in between it like this. So I went all the way around it. Now I'm gonna lay beads where the pan actually bends. So you're just gonna go like this, horizontally on both sides. All right, so now the sealant is installed, I'm gonna show you how to put this on the car. So now I'm gonna install the lower timing chain cover. You can see right here is a dowel pin, and then right here is a dowel pin. You're gonna see holes on the side of the cover right here. That's the dowel pin, so you wanna go in carefully and try to line it up the best you can without scraping any of the sealant off. And you can see the dowel pins right here and right here. Now we can go ahead and start hand tightening the T30s. So now it's time to torque the lower timing chain cover. It's 8 Newton meters for the first torque, and you're going to go diagonal. I'm going to go around and make sure they're all torqued to the 8 Newton meters. Now for the second torque, you want to go around and do plus 45, but you just want to make sure that they're tight. And tight. So now the lower timing chain cover is installed. All right, now I'm going to take the old crank bolt out with a 24 millimeter. So now it's time to install the crank pulley. There's a cutout right here on the gear, and there's a mark right here on the crank pulley. You have to line those up so you can put it on and rotate it, and you can actually feel it lock into place. It's lined up here. You're gonna install a new crank bolt because it's a torque yield. You can only use them once. So install this one all the way by hand. So now you're gonna use the crank counterhold specialty tool. You're gonna line it up. You're gonna slowly rotate it. You're actually gonna use the frame rail to be your friend to counterhold it. You're gonna torque this bolt to 150 plus 90. So once it catches, all right. I'm gonna use the same trick with the black Sharpie. I'm gonna make a line. Just to give you a rough estimate of 90 degrees. Now we're gonna do plus 90. I'm gonna use a pull right here to get some leverage for the 90. There we go. And now the crank bolt's installed. Now we're gonna install the strut belt tensioner. It's held in by two M10 triple squares. I'm gonna do the top one first. Now I'm gonna do some tension on the tensioner. I'm gonna put the other triple square where it's supposed to go. Actually, install the bottom. Now I'm gonna torque the strut belt tensioners to 8 Newton meters. Now it's time to put the belt on. Start with the alternator. You're gonna tuck it underneath the tensioner, underneath the AC. And now you're gonna loosen tension. You're gonna wrap it around the crank fully. And you just wanna inspect to make sure the belt is fully seated on all the ribs, and this one's fully seated. Now I'm gonna reinstall these two T30s to the cylinder head that go to the block. These are the ones that you remove to install the special tool to release tension on the tensioner. These are torqued to 8 Newton meters. All right, so now the T30s are installed in the cylinder head, I'm gonna go ahead and install the new cambridge. You're just gonna slide them over. So sometimes you have to wiggle it in. That's installed. Now the cambridge installed, we're gonna install the T30s again. Now I'm gonna install the M10 triple square. Now I'm gonna reinstall the valve. Now remember, this valve is reverse threaded, so you're gonna wanna go to the left. To tighten it, I'm using a hook pick just to help me speed up the process. Now I'm going to torque the T30s to 9 Newton meters. Now I'm going to torque this triple square M10 to 20 Newton meters. Now I'm going to torque the valve with a special tool. It's 35 Newton meters. And this is reverse threaded, so you're going to want to go lefty-loosey to tighten it. So right here we have the upper timing chain cover. You always want to replace this gasket, so I'm going to rip the old one out. And the bolts sometimes fall out. So far, they seem to be actually staying in the cover, which is good. I have the new gasket. You have to rotate the gasket around. It only goes on one way. So follow the tracks, push it in. You're going to push the gasket down and the bolt up, because the bolt's actually going to hold the gasket in place. And we can go ahead and install it on the cylinder head. All right, now we're going to install the upper timing chain cover. There's 5 T30s that hold it in place. Now we're going to torque the 5 T30s to 9 Newton meters, and you're going to go in a start pattern like you were to install a wheel. So now we're going to install the camshaft adjuster solenoid on the upper timing chain cover. It's held in by 3 T30s. I'm just going to install 2 of them right now. The third one actually is going to hold the dipstick in place. Now we're going to install the oil dipstick tube, and the third bolt goes right here. I'm just going to grab a little oil on my finger. I'm going to lubricate the O-ring. we're gonna install the dipstick. Now we're gonna insert the dipstick tube, push down, and you're gonna swing it over. And you're gonna take this coolant pipe and put it over the dipstick tube. Now I'm gonna install the third T30 for the dipstick tube. And then I'm gonna install the T30 for the dipstick tube and the coolant line. Now we're gonna go ahead and torque all of these T30s we just installed to 9 Newton meters. Now we can go ahead and plug in the solenoid and push in the safety gray tab. Now I'm gonna take the coolant crossover pipe, you're gonna clip it into the holder, you're gonna slide it over where the dipstick was. Now we're gonna slide the clip on. All right, now we're gonna install the oil filter. I've got a little bit of oil on my finger. I'm gonna lubricate the seal. Oil filter goes right on top. You're gonna screw it in, and I just install this by hand, tight. So now we're gonna put the front clip on. It's easier if you grab a friend to help you because this is very heavy. I've been here, he's gonna help me really quick, put the front clip on. Now you're gonna grab these two T30s, you're gonna put them in hand tight on both sides. All right, so now we're gonna install the T30 right underneath the headlight to bolt the clip together. These are just hand tight, goes into plastic, so don't go crazy with it. And it's the same on the passenger side. All right, so now I'm gonna install the 16 millimeters for the crossbar. So I'm gonna use a 1/2 inch. You're gonna put the 16 in the inner one. You're actually gonna wanna grab the crash bar and lift up and just put these in by hand. And it's the same process on the passenger side. And now you're gonna wanna go around and tighten all 3 of these bolts on both sides by hand. All right, so now I'm gonna use a pair of dikes. I'm gonna cut the zip ties I used to hold the tranny fluid in. I'm gonna remove this one. I'm gonna screw this one back on. I'm gonna do the same thing for this line. Take a pair of dikes, cut the zip tie, remove this glove, put this line back on. I'm gonna use a 19 and 22 millimeter. There's no torque on this. You just wanna make sure they're hand tight. Now we're gonna plug in the radiator fan control module. You wanna hear it clip, and you also wanna push in the red safety tab. So now we're gonna install the carrier brackets. You're gonna slide it in, push the fender liner back a little bit, like that. You're gonna hand tight the T30 right here. And then there's a 13 millimeter nut on the inside. And now we're gonna go ahead and tighten both. There's no torque on this, just hand tight. Now I'm gonna go ahead and hand tighten the T30. Now we're gonna repeat the same process on the driver's side. Now we're gonna install the lower radiator hose. Just gonna grab it, push it in. And you wanna hear that clip. Now we're gonna install the intercooler hose on the driver's side. You can use a flathead or a 7 millimeter. I'm gonna use a flathead. And on this hose, after I tighten it, always give a pull on it because you don't want this to come off. All right, now we're gonna install the intercooler hose on the passenger side. Slide it in. Again, I'm using a flathead, or you can use a 7 millimeter. Always pull on this, make sure this doesn't come off. Now I'm gonna remove the 4 13 millimeters that's holding onto the crash bar. I'm on the passenger side right now. Now that the bolts are removed, I'm going to slide the crash bar out. All right, so now I'm going to take the condenser. We are going to put it back into place. So before you clip them in, you want to make sure that they're all even, and you're going to push down together to make sure they clip in properly. So now the condenser is installed. So now we're going to plug in the headlight. You're going to clip it to the carrier right here. You're going to take the connector, plug it into the housing, like that. You want to hear the clip. We're going to tighten this T30 right here on top of the carrier. Now I'm going to tighten the T30 for the headlight. It's right underneath the air box. And you just want to just hand tighten these T30s. Now I'm going to do the same process on the driver's side. All right, so now we're going to plug in the hood latch connector. You're going to actually grab the hood latch itself, and then you're going to see this cable. You want to press the ball in, pull. You want these ears to go in there. You're going to grab this cover. You're going to slide it over here, align it with the ears down here, and then you'll see a hole right here, which is where you're going to put them right here on both sides. Just lightly bend them. Now they clip into place. And now we're going to put the bracket on. This opening right here is going to clip to the cable. So you're going to press them in, make sure it's lined up. Press in, and then slide the cable on. All right, so now I'm going to put the driver's side headlight bracket. I'm going to start the T30 right here into the bracket. And now I'm going to line up the rivet. Now we're going to tighten the T30 by hand. So I have the T30 installed. I have the main rivet installed right here. The upper rivet, it's very hard to actually get to rivet down, but this thing's not moving anywhere. Just for a safety precaution, I'm just going to use a zip tie for now. But you don't have to worry about this going anywhere. All right, so now I'm going to install this cover. This bottom piece right here is going to slide where the intercooler is. You're going to take this valve that comes off the headlight. You're going to put it in here. You're going to line the bottom tab and the top two tabs together. Just push in like that. And now it's the same process for the passenger side. All right, so now I'm going to install the crash bar again. All right, so now we're going to install the 4 13 millimeters. For these, they go in a lot easier if you put them upside down. So they go underneath. Just feed them up. Do the same thing for the second one. We're going to go over to the passenger side and do the same steps. So I'm going to hand tighten the 13 millimeters. I have a 13 millimeter wrench on the bottom to counter hold. I'm going to tighten this 13 millimeter. You don't want to go crazy, it's just aluminum, so I would just go hand tight. So now we're going to plug in the harness. It's going to clip in right here. Plug in the airbag, push in the brown safety tab. I'm going to clip it up here. Right here. This one right here is going to follow, plug into the horn. You're going to clip it here. Clip it right here. plug in this sensor, clip it on the radiator right here. And these we're going to plug in when we put the front bumper on. Now we're going to do the harness on the passenger side. So now we're going to install the front bumper. You're going to pick it up evenly. Slid in, we'll go over to the driver's side. You're going to want to make sure these tabs are lined up for underneath the headlight. Give it a light tap. We're going to do the same thing for the passenger side. So now we're going to plug in the fog light, peel back the wheel liner, clip it in. Now we're on the passenger side. It's going to be the same process as the driver. Peel back the wheel liner, plug in the fog light. Now we're going to install the 3 T25s just by hand. Now we're going to do the same process on the driver's side. All right, so now we're going to plug in these sensors. This sensor needs to be inserted back in its bracket. Squeeze it in. You're going to push in the red safety tab. Then you go right here and plug that in. I'm going to take the coolant reservoir cap off. And we're actually going to vacuum fill the coolant system. We have a U-View coolant system filler, which has a cone, which is going to be a seal. We're going to plug that air in because we're using an air compressor. You want to make sure that this valve is closed, this blue one. You're going to hit this button. Okay, we can go ahead and plug the air. And you can see that the gauge is actually in the green, so that means that there's good seal in the cooling system. We're going to take G13. It's 50-50 mix, so there's already water in it, which is why it says do not add water, because usually when you buy coolant, you have to add water. So now in the U-View, there's a screen. You're going to put the hose with the screen, and you're going to go ahead and put it in the coolant jug. And that blue valve that I mentioned before that's closed, you're going to go ahead and open it. This is what's actually going to suck the coolant. All right, so we use the U-View to vacuum fill it. Most of it. I'm just going to top the coolant. Okay, it's at the max line. We're going to put the cap on. Now we're going to go ahead and fill the car with oil. I'm using the CTA oil filler tool. This car takes 4.9 quarts of oil, but since we've done so much work to it, it may take all 5 quarts of this. All right. So the car has oil in it. When the car is ready to start, after that we'll check the oil level, and if we have to top off oil, we'll top off the oil. All right, so now that everything's buttoned up, coolant oil's in, we have the car at operating temperature, and now we're gonna go ahead and check your oil level, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. So the car's running. You can't check the oil level with the car running, so you're gonna turn the car off. Don't put your foot on the brake. You're gonna hit the key in again. Okay, you're gonna hit car. You're going to use the knob right here. You're going to scroll to servicing and checks. You're going to hit OK with it. OK. You're going to scroll down, oil level. And now we have to wait approximately 2 minutes, and it's going to show you the oil level on it on the screen. If it's a little low, we'll go ahead and top it off, and then we'll check the oil level again. All right, so now we're going to install the engine cover back on and close the hood, and we're all set. So that about wraps it up for the timing chain job. As you can see, it's a pretty intensive job. I am using a lift for it. It makes it a lot easier, but you can also do this job at your house on some jack stands. Also, it's a good idea to buy the CTA timing tool kit that we do have listed on the website. That link will be down below. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you have any questions, leave in the comment box below. And as always, I'll see you soon.
I like it, but just don't sound like you hate your life so much, bro.
Ugh.